Well, good evening, everybody. And I don't need as much of this. Thank you, Tony, so much. Some of the kids are speaking a little low today, so the AV booth, we're trying to accommodate for those quiet-spoken young people, and the mic was still turned up. But anyway, welcome to Vespers with us tonight. We have some visitors. We're thankful that you're with us tonight. And tonight we get to hear from Emory. Obviously, you all know that he's back from Palawan, and we're excited to hear about his journey. So we're going to have a word of prayer. We're going to have him come right up. Heavenly Father, thank you so much that we have this time together tonight as a church and time together with Emory and also friends who are passing through. And we just pray that you bless our time together. And we thank you so much in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right. Happy Sabbath, folks. Hope you're all doing good. Everybody have a good Sabbath? Yep, hopefully, yes. All right. So, like Pastor was saying, I just want to talk a little bit about my adventures in Palawan. So I've got some slides, and afterwards there's some rocks up here if y'all want to see rocks. Also, anytime while I'm talking, if you want to ask a question, that's perfectly fine. Just raise your hand, and that's fine. And if you want to ask questions at the end, it doesn't bother me either. All right, so... All right, first slide. Talking about the beginning of the trip, lots of paperwork and quarantine. So as many of you guys know, I went to training in July of last year. And I was actually told before training, you're going to go straight from training. And I was told that a week before training. So I was like, oh, shoot. So I got to get everything all planned. It's okay if I stand up here? I want to stand up here. So I had to get everything packed, ready in a really fast time. So I really wasn't packed as well as I should have been at all. Like everything, I had way too much stuff, really disorganized. But as we get through training, they start talking about what it's actually like to go to the Philippines. And actually, the Philippines has some crazy COVID restrictions that are just really tough. You got to do all sorts of stuff because they weren't even allowing people to enter the country. So they're starting to do all of these things. They figured out that they had to apply for this different type of visa, or it's actually an exemption visa, is what it was actually. So we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And you can see I don't know if this thing works. No. Okay, the one down here on the bottom, that's my visa. I can't tell you how excited I was when I saw that come in the mail. It was an amazing relief because this is like months of just like waiting. It's like, when are we even going to be able to go? So myself and the other medical student missionary were pretty excited about that because it turned out they were only letting people in if they were like medical personnel. So I was a little worried because I was like, I was afraid they would be like, oh, you're just an EMT, you're not a nurse or something, so you can't go. So I was excited about that. So, getting ahead of myself. Quarantine, you can see the skyline of Manila, or what I could see from the hotel. It was kind of boring in quarantine. It was like 5 days. The other student missionary was in the room above me, so we would just kind of like sit on the phone with each other and like see if we could guess all of the buildings that we could see by looking at Google Maps. You get bored. So getting on Google Maps and looking out the window, so we're both having the same views, like, you think this is it? Yeah, I think that's it. No, it's not that building, it's this one. That was fun. And then there's some lovely quarantine food that we could make. I had like this little electric pot thingy that they gave us that you like plug in, and that was it. So it was fun. Continuing. Okay, seeing Palawan for the first time. So these are some of my first views I saw in Palawan. You can see the sunset picture. That was the first night at this quarantine facility that we were afraid we were going to have to stay there for a long time. And this place was kind of nasty. It was like just like a bare room that was kind of clean. It had a whole bunch of ants in it, and it just had like a wooden bed thing that you lay down, and they had running water, which was nice. So it was kind of like, well, we're definitely here now, when we had that. But it turned out we didn't actually have to stay there because, again, Philippine COVID stuff, it's all over the place. It's fun. So there's first pictures of Palawan. It was definitely kind of a surreal experience. We were just kind of sitting there at the airport. I remember waiting to get picked up by Seth Miller, the missionary. We're just kind of like sitting here like, look at us, We're actually here after all the work it had taken to get there and all the waiting and all the stressful paperwork and all of that. So when we first got there, we weren't able to go to the mountains yet because there were people in Kamantian, which is the main village in the mountains, that had COVID. And there was only like the one nurse up there didn't really want extra people coming in because she's like, I've got enough dealing with COVID. I don't want brand new student missionaries. So we were staying in the lowlands for a little while, working at the farm some, and we got to go to this church that you see, which is the top left picture. And then inside, you see inside the church, this is in the lowlands still, but it is the Palawan people. Funny story about that. In Palawan, the genders are very much separated. It's a very strong separation. They don't really come together, so that goes to church as well. Men on one side, women on the other side. I had been told this. We walk in and I promptly sit down on the women's side, and Janelle looks over and he's like, Emory. I was like, oh shoot. So then I get up and go over there. I was like, well, lovely. This is great. We're starting out real good. So yeah, it was fun. The picture that's the top middle, that is at the farm. It's a nice view from there. Still really flat, so it's kind of like, it was several weeks or whatever, so I was kind of like, man, when are we going to get to go to the mountains? I'm sitting here staring at these beautiful mountains, but we can't go. But it was fun. We did some good work at the farm. This guy that you see in the top right corner, he was somebody who lived up in the mountains, and he was a diabetic, and it was untreated diabetes, so his leg was pretty much rotted off. So they ended up having to take him to a hospital in Puerto and get that amputated. And so he was still living at the farm, recuperating. So it was my job to change his bandage every day. So I was a little worried about that at first because I was like, I don't know, it was just kind of like getting thrown right in. I wasn't sure what to expect, and also I can't talk with him, right? Like at all. Like one word, I can kind of say, hello, can I come inside your house? And that was about it. So like he would be telling me stuff, and I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying. And I'm really trying to understand what he says. And then at one point, he wants me to give him a haircut. So I ended up giving him a haircut, and I was like, I think this is what you're saying. So let me step back. So first he's like saying all this stuff to me, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, I'm sorry. And then he's like this to his hair. He's like, do this, do this. And I was like, okay, I think I get the idea. So then I cut his hair. Yeah, so you can see in this, it's really short because it's just kind of with scissors, and he's just like, just do it. Because first I was trying to be careful and like not go really short because I don't know how short he wants it. But then he's like, no. And he wants me to do it just as close to his head as I can. I think he was probably really hot and stuff because it's hot there. Working on the farm, so you can see it's muddy, very muddy. I'm not sure how it ended up, but apparently the decision was made that the grass is really long, and whether it's rainy or not, we're just going to mow anyway. So that was my job. So you can see what the end result was of how I looked afterwards, because it would get stuck in some places like every 10 minutes or something. So I'm sitting there trying to push the thing out. And and then sometimes you have to go get the other farm workers. Guys, can you please come help me? Because the mower is stuck again. So yeah, that was definitely an interesting experience for sure. Then I took a picture of the water buffalo there because I thought it was cool because I'd never actually seen one before. I think that's what you call it. They call it a carabao. Here is Brooks Point, Palawan, at least some of the pictures that I have. So you see there at the beach, you see one of the streets, and then the Christmas lights that I thought were really cool. I took a picture of that. And then some of us. So you see there's me, then there's one of the Philippine student missionaries, and then there's Janelle, who's the one other American student missionary, and then there's one other Philippine student missionary. That would be Phoebe and Harlan. More pictures from Brooks Point. The bottom one that you see me in with the backpack, that was an interesting one. There wasn't really a good ride getting to town from the farm, or like back and forth, so I just I'm going to walk into town, just like a mile or so. Then I bought all my supplies, and then I kind of regretted it because I bought a lot of supplies that time. I was slightly legitimately worried that my backpack was going to break. That's how heavy it was. So I'm walking all the way back from the market, which is a decent way, so I was like, well, this is nice. The fishing boats there are kind of cool, I thought. And in the top left corner, I'll talk about him more. That's my friend Anak when we were staying at the farm. There is more Brooks Point. So you see just nice pictures, the rice fields in the two bottom corners. Up in the top left corner, that's at the farm. If you're sitting on the front porch of the main house there, that's that. So you can see it puddles up there, which is nice because it becomes a mosquito pit. So you're standing there in front of the farm, like sitting there like waiting to figure out what you're going to do for the day or whatever, and the mosquitoes are just killing you. Yeah, so that's fun. There's some food that we made while we were in the lowlands there. We were staying at like this little apartment that the project owns, which is close to the farm, but not like really close, where the Millers stay. If any of you guys are familiar with Seth and Sonia Miller and their family, they're the AFM missionaries that kind of run things in the lowlands. So this one's kind of getting ahead of myself, but I'll talk about this now. So after I had been in Kamantian for a while, I was one day getting ready to cook supper. I was going to eat some kumbahang with like chocolate powder. Kumbahang is cassava. Anybody familiar with cassava? So they grind it up, and it can be kind of like a powder thing. Not really a powder, shredded. And it's really good if you can mix it with different stuff. So one time I mixed it up with water and then fried it and had it savory. So this time I wanted to make it sweet. I'm almost done cooking it. I'm almost about the part where I'm going to start frying it. And then I get a call somebody got sent out to the lowlands and they don't have a watcher with them. So we need you to hike out now and go stay with them for the weekend. It's lovely. So that was fun. I got to see how fast I could go down the Kamantian Trail, which I was proud of myself, how fast I went down it, because I ran all the way. But the cool thing is this guy here, he's not actually the patient I went to stay with, but all of the other people that were in the ward with us, they were all Palawan people, so I could talk to them all. And so we had a really good time, we could all chat and stuff, because this is after I actually know some Palawan. So it was cool, because usually when you go to the lowlands, when the people speak Tagalog or just tiny little pieces of English, it's just not really fun, especially when you go from actually being able to kind of communicate in the mountains. So it's kind of almost like a whole change in culture if you go from the mountains down to the lowlands or vice versa. But it was cool because they were lowland Palauans, but they could still speak Palauan, so we could talk with them. And this guy was really nice, and he wanted to take a picture with me. And then bonus, there's a puppy and some kittens there, which are fun. All right. So one of the Sabbaths, when we went to the Mallis church, we went to this really cool place. You kind of go up this trail, and there's a waterfall, and all the kids love sliding down that, and I had a lot of fun with that too. That was actually my first time to actually semi-go hiking in Palawan, but it wasn't that far. It's just a short thing. If you guys saw in the earlier picture, the rice paddies, the real bright green rice paddies, that was in a similar place, the trail connected to there. So, a lot of times when we were there, things would happen last minute, at least it seemed like. So when we went to Marma for boot camp, which is another village, which I'll talk more in depth later, we went there because that's where Jill and George, who is Leanda and Kent George, who are the starters of the project, they ended up adopting her. She now lives in another village called Marma, and she runs her ministry there. And so she's in the past always been in charge of boot camp. So for that reason, we went to her village because she didn't used to live there. It's reasonably new development that she's there. So that was just some fun there. So you can see it's taking a picture with the people up there. I was really worried about standing too close to the ladies, so you can see I'm way far away from them. I later learned it's not quite that big of a deal, but this is right after I first got there, so I'm I don't know if I'm even supposed to be in a picture with you guys. So yeah. In the bottom middle, you can see that's where some of our first experiences with the real-time hiking. It's very slippery. I'm looking up in the process of either having just gotten up from a fall or getting ready to do another one. Jillian was thoroughly enjoying videoing us slip and fall as we try to go down that trail. This is a really steep trail. It's you look down and it's just kind of as close as you can get to vertical without actually being vertical. It's kind of the way I like to describe it. And then you see us, where you see the people on the kind of a flat area, it's the landing area. We're playing a game where it's like a top, you wrap a string around it and you throw it. And then if you're really good, you throw yours and somebody else throws another one and tries to hit yours with theirs. It was kind of cool. I could, once or twice got it to where I could make the top spin. So yeah. All right, more boot camp pictures. We're generally there. It was intensive language learning. Jillian was teaching us as much of Palawan as we could. It was still hard because lots of people there that want to talk to you, and there's not any English speakers except for the one person. So it was really stressful. It was kind of weird because we would go to bed every night so tired, and it was why are we so tired? We kind of thought it's because like we're constantly stressing to understand what the people are saying when we can't understand. At least that was kind of my conclusus. But yeah, boot camp was also really cool for me because for boot camp, it's supposed to be like bare minimum stuff. So like not your phone, not really much of anything, like one backpack kind of thing. So it was cool for me because in my downtime, I didn't have anything to do but read the Bible. But the way I was able to understand the Bible and connect with it, I did in a way I'd never had before. Because I would just sit and like read a whole book. So then I was getting the author's perspective, just like the whole story that this author of this book is trying to tell. And I was like, this is so cool. I've never actually thought of this. Because, it's like, for Sabbath school, you study this chapter or that chapter. You're just reading a chapter a day. It's like, it was just cool for me because, like, I wasn't ever getting, like, the full picture. I was like, this is really cool. Because I'm seeing it so much quicker that I'm getting a better perspective of it. So I thought that was really cool. So that was kind of the blessing I got from boot camp. But yeah, but during that time I was kind of missing friends and family and stuff too because like again, you don't have your phone, you can't say hello, you can't really do anything, and there's only one person in the entire area around that can speak English. So that was fun. This is now scenery around Kamantian. I'm going to have to look at this so I can see. So all of this here is just like from outside of Kamantian. These two in the top right here, those are actually looking down into Kamantian. So Kamantian is actually a really developed place. It's more developed than like anywhere else in the mountains, to my knowledge. So the trails are actually really good. There's some places where they actually have like stone things in the trail for you to stand on to keep from slipping and all of that. But even from like here, you can tell it's like obviously doesn't look like there's a town or something there. So it was kind of funny. Like everybody talked about it being really built up and stuff, so I kind of expected to be like, I don't know, like a little town or like a village with like all the huts, like all the houses together or something. The houses are really spread out. Like rarely do you see where a bunch of the Palawano people build their houses together, except in one place where they used to live in Marmot, but they don't live there anymore. So this is more in and around Kamantian, just kind of cool scenery pictures because that's probably the majority of what I take. That's just kind of what I like. So if you don't like scenery, sorry. Up here, if you see like the little point sticking up right in the very middle of the big picture, that is Kabatangan, or if you're looking at it from the Filipino perspective, it's Mantalingajan, or something like that. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it, but that's the Tagalog word for it. But the Palawan people, they call it Kabatangan. This here is me at the Tumlong River, which is the river that's right next to Kamantian. So Kamantian is nice in that there's a river really close. If you want to go to the river, it's like maybe a 30-minute walk or less. So it's pretty close. Maybe depends on where in Kamantian you are, but yeah. More scenery. This is Kamantian. Actually, if you look here, I don't know if you guys can see, but in the middle of this picture, you see like a cleared spot. That's the runway in Kamantian. So there's actually a little runway in there that they have a specialized plane that's intended for like short takeoffs and landings. So they can actually land that plane there, which is pretty cool. Fortunately, I never got to see the plane fly. I really wanted to, but it was having issues like the whole time I was there. So yeah. Next. This is more pictures of the Tumlong River. It's a really cool place. You can swim. Lots of people go down there and swim and whatnot. So that's really cool. I was just proud of this picture. I thought it was a nice picture. I was like, afterwards, after I took it, I was like, man, I got the flower in here and everything, and it was, I think this is sunrise, yeah. So it was a sunrise picture. So I guess here I'll talk about, in Kamantian, once you do get your phone back, because if you're a student missionary, you don't have it for 2 weeks in boot camp, and then another 2 weeks, and then you get your phone back. But it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good because you only get service if you like hike up to this ridge, which is a really steep trail. If you're going fast, you can get there from like my house near the school to the ridge in 15 minutes if you're hiking slower, and if you're like really pushing it, maybe 10 minutes, but you're going to be tired out regardless by the time you get up there. But that's the only place that you could get service. So right here is one of the service spots. So I was up there getting service one time. This is more pics. Right here is Kamantian. It's another angle where you're seeing the landing on there. These are just pictures kind of outside of Kamantian looking away towards the lowlands. I thought this was cool because the tree is just really big. A couple of times I would just go hiking by myself because I thought it would be fun. So I went out to kind of explore the trails. People would ask me what I was doing sometimes, and I would just say, I'm learning about the trails. I didn't really know another way to say it, so the words I knew was, I'm learning about trails, or something like that. So yeah, cool. Anybody watch nature videos sometimes? Anybody ever hear of Snake Master? Snake Master? No? Okay. We had this DVD that when we were kids that we watched it all the time. And one of the ones, he goes to Borneo, and he climbs up this tree, and it looks exactly like this tree. So when I saw it, I was like, that is so cool. This goes from seeing this only on TV to now I'm actually standing beside it. So I thought that was really cool, so that's why I took the pictures of that. So different pictures in Kamantian. So the one in the top center, that is my house in Kamantian. That's where I lived. Well, the bottom of it you see there is a classroom. The bottom is a classroom, and the top is my house. So it's kind of awkward, when there's people having class down beneath you and you're trying to do stuff in your house. It's like, should I cook? Are they going to get upset if I'm cooking and they're smelling the food I'm cooking? So yeah, that was interesting. The bottom right is one of the pictures of the school buildings. If you see, it's looking up from right in front of my house. You can see the two big school buildings. Basically, all the buildings there, they kind of look the same, which I'll have some pictures of inside a building. Well, I guess you already saw the one from the Marlis Church. It's just a bamboo floor, and then they have the braided bamboo walls of different types of bamboo. I wanted them to tell me one word for bamboo, and they're like, yeah, no, friend, there's 5 different words for it because we have different types, actually. So, yeah, that was cool. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
My concern is animals, snakes, and stuff like that.
Yeah, we saw some snakes. The Palawan people, they don't really like snakes. They kill them when they see them. Yeah.
You say you go all by yourself on a trail or something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't really worried about it because I do lots of hiking here in the U.S. too, so I was I don't mind going to the woods here, and I've gone to some pretty wild places. So I was like, well, I think it would be fun. And I figured, well, they do it, so why can't I? Probably not the best logic, seeing how they grew up with it and they know what they're doing and stuff. But, I figured, well, if I see a snake, either it'll bite me before I have any chance to see it, or I'll see it and stop and not get too close. So, yeah. So this is a panorama looking, I think it's looking away from Kamantian. It's in a place called Sungsong, I think, which is right beside Kamantian. You see on the top left, that is one of the clinic buildings called the birthing house, but they use it for if somebody's having a baby or if there's extra inpatients that are filling up the actual clinic. So there's some folks out there having worship, I think, with some patients. The guy in the top center, this guy is a really nice guy. His name was Mantapang. You call him Maman Mantapang because if somebody ordered them like that, you address them as uncle, so it would be Maman. He was the first person in Kamantian that I went to for language learning and stuff, and he was so excited because he didn't really have people to visit him very much. So him and I think it's his cousin or some relative that has a house right next to him, they're just old guys and they don't have anybody in with them, so they get bored because they're just sitting on their own all the time. So they were so excited. The head nurse or one of the nurses at the clinic told me afterward that when she saw them, they were so excited to tell her that they had gotten a visitor. So that made me feel good that I made them happy. So they were really good. He was kind of hard to learn from because just the way he would say words would be kind of different. I once thought from him that he was telling me the word Raju was jar, and I just took that at face value. But he was actually just pointing to something else, and he was just saying radio. I learned this months later when I tried to use that, and somebody else is like, no, that's not right. Yeah. Here you see in the top right, that's Pastor Kent George. He's one of the founders of the project, really good guy. I worked with him several times when I was at the farm. He mostly stays in the lowlands and then comes to Kamantian on the weekends. And there's 2 little boys that he's there with, so yeah. Okay, the river floods. So you can see one picture of me standing on this bridge when there's no flood, and you see when there is flood. So we get some pretty heavy rain, and all the water goes to the one big river, and so it floods. So you have to be careful when you're planning on hiking and stuff because it gets really slippery, and yeah. And also, some people think that bridge is interesting because you kind of need to be careful on it. Yeah. I wouldn't suggest, slipping because you probably won't survive. So, in the top right, you see another flood picture. This is actually a decent picture where you can see the school buildings, hopefully. So, it's like the high school and then one of the other buildings. So, Kamantian is the biggest school. There are other outlying schools, but Kamantian is the original one, and it's the principal one. They've been there for maybe 30 years. So, it's a pretty established school, and they have quite a few students, and I couldn't tell you how many. I'm not going to try to guess for you. You see another flooding picture there. Yeah.
Quick question. I'm still stuck back on the bridge. Here bridges have like something to walk on. Right. That is the wire.
Yeah, it's a cable. Yeah.
So it's 3 cables. You just hold the 2.
And then there's like this really thick plastic cord that's connecting the middle one to these. I think they use it for like fishing and stuff, but that's what they use for it. It's actually pretty strong stuff. But one of them did break when I was walking across, so that made me feel great. So it's not like, the main cable is still fine, but like it just popped when I was going across. I was like, well, that's nice. Hopefully all the others don't, because like, admittedly, if they were all not there, it would be swinging probably quite a bit and stuff. This picture and this picture, I did not actually take. They were actually taken after I left, but I didn't have a good picture of all the church in Kamantian. So this is the new church building that they just finished. So that's all the folks at church. I know most of those people. A lot of really good folks there in Kamantian. And here's an idea of how they kind of do things for potluck. So everybody just kind of brings something, and then someone goes and cuts a bunch of banana leaves, and there you go. And then bonus flood picture. So you can see you have these dirt paths, and then they just turn into creeks when it rains. So yeah, it's fun. The clinic. So the first 4 months, it was basically between Kamantian and then the other village, which I'll talk about later, Marma. So it's basically half and half. So clinic and then in Marma. So working at the clinic, so basically how that would go is people show up and sit on the porch, and you go out and say, hey, are you asking for medicine, or are you just here to chat or sell us something? Sorry? Oh, you would say, mana'aukat ubat. Basically, are you asking for something? Are you asking for medicine? And they'll tell you, or gaya. Gaya mu punti. If they're asking you want to buy, they'll be like, no, you want to buy something, or you want to buy bananas, or sanglai, sweet potatoes. Some people would come around selling that. So at the clinic, I had a lot of learning, did a lot of my language use there. They didn't really want us to sit there practicing language because obviously you're supposed to be working. So it was a half day at the clinic, and then the other half of the day you're expected to be going out and visiting people and practicing the language until the in charge person is okay, yeah, you're fine. So it was 3 or 4 months. It was not too long before I left Kamantian that they said you don't have to turn in your language learning reports in, because they had these papers and you had to log how much time you had spent language learning, because it's really an important thing. So that you can see here's one of the ways that they have transported patients out of Kamantian, because Kamantian's reasonably close to the lowlands. When I say close, like an hour hike, or hour. No, I shouldn't say that. That's if you're going fast and you're not carrying anything. It's probably gonna be 2 hours. For these folks, it was probably 2 hours or more than that, because they're carrying them and they're going to be really careful and all of that. So here's other pictures inside the clinic, so all of the files there. One of the first things we had to learn when we got to the clinic is they sat us down and you need to learn the alphabet. You can't file this stuff in an English manner. So yeah, that was fun. It took me a little while to get that, because it's close, but they have a little bit less letters than us. Have one letter that we don't have, and some stuff is kind of rearranged. So that's inside the clinic, and that's one of the nurses who's actually still working there at the clinic. So yeah. Okay, so not too long after I had gotten to Kamantian, I had an interesting experience. So I think I'd been in Kamantian 3 weeks, maybe, or maybe this was the beginning of the 3rd week. I go up to the ridge because I'd just gotten my phone back, so I was kind of excited about that. And I get a call from one of the nurses, and they're like, where are you? I'm like, well, I'm up on the ridge. You know, that's why I answered your call. I didn't say that. So they're like talking about this person who had to get flown out to Puerto, actually, because they were so bad. So what happened is there was a kid that was climbing in a tree, and he falls out and impales himself on a stick, like a stump. So the stump is like maybe this big and goes all the way through him. So then they send somebody to the clinic to get Justina and Carrie, who are the main nurses. They then hike to where this person is, and then they're like, yeah, this is really bad. And then they call in the helicopter to there. They fly him out. They almost stopped and picked me up on the way, but then decided not to when they were going there because the plan was already they wanted me to go and stay with this patient because they needed somebody to be with them. So I didn't really know this. I didn't really know what was going on other than the fact that they said something about you're going to go and then like you can't go, and we saw the helicopter fly over. So other than that, I didn't really know what was going on, and then somebody said something about an emergency, so I was like, okay. And so then the next day, then I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what I'm doing. So I've only just gotten to there. I still don't really know what I'm doing, and like, you're going to go to Puerto, which is the city like 4 hours to the north by yourself. Have fun. So they have me come down. They say, get the motorcycle there, which thankfully doesn't have a clutch on it, because like I can do that. I can ride a motorcycle with a clutch, but I would felt better because it wasn't, because I haven't practiced that much. So I rode that into Brooks Point from the Kamantian trailhead. Then I got a shuttle bus from Brooks Point to Puerto. And then there's my backpack, and you can see that was the thing in the bottom right corner there is where we were sleeping for the first several nights. So I was kind of laughing at myself. I was like, you know, I backpacked in a lot of places because like I love backpacking, right? So I was like, now I'm backpacking in a hospital. Never done this before. So you see there's some pictures of in Puerto, because I would walk from the hospital to another place to get food for them and whatnot. Basically, if you're the watcher person with a patient there in the Philippines, you're kind of like their personal CNA, because they don't really have people like that in the hospital. And the standards are a little bit lower than here in the U.S., quite a bit actually. Cats live in the hospital and stuff. So you can see me in the bottom left corner, and then on the right is Anak, and who is Subliki's older brother. Subliki is the boy who fell out of the tree and got hurt. So the earlier picture that you saw of me and Anak in Brooks Point is after we get done in Puerto. So I ended up living in Puerto at the hospital for like 2 weeks. So that was an interesting experience, to say the least. Yeah. This in the top left is after we get to the farm. I stayed there for 1 more week at the farm because they needed somebody to change his bandage every day because the Millers had gotten COVID, so that was nice. Let's see.
So is that when he is released from the hospital?
Yes, he's been released to the hospital and he's here now. That's us in the car getting ready to go back, and that's a picture of the AFM article because I get mentioned in it, so I thought that was kind of cool. It's not much. If you've read the article, it just says that student missionary Emory Kelley went to the lowlands to stay with him. Okay, Pathfinders. I like Pathfinders. Pathfinders is something that's really important to me, and I have a lot of fun with it. I did a lot of it here in the U.S. before I went over there, so I was really excited to hear that they actually had a Pathfinder club there, and I got to help out with it. So I got to help teaching drilling and marching, which that was fun because trying to get them to understand what they need to do, but also in another language. So trying to learn key words like don't move really quickly. When you're standing at attention, do not move. Yeah. They were really good kids, though. By the time we got done with the drilling and marching, all of these kids did really well. They were dedicated kids, and they were trying to do their best. I was really proud of, it was a pretty big club, so they have it divided into teams. So I was really proud of my team because they did really well, and they got a good score on their test. So, yeah. Other pictures of Pathfinders. So another thing with Pathfinders that we did was they had, I would call it kind of like an area camp out because the Pathfinders in Kamantian were camping, and they had people from another village come. So that was cool. I know actually 2 other villages. So the 2 other villages where they have a school, they had folks come from there. So it was a good time. So we had activities and honors and all of that. So let's see. Oh, in the top left corner, if you can see, there's kind of a person standing on a rope here. So the activity I was in charge of was you know where you stand on the bottom rope and hold on to the other rope and you go across. So it's just kind of like a little obstacle course thing. Another interesting thing was for the Friday night program, I was the speaker, which was the most I ever spoke in Palawan probably at one time, where I had to actually make what I wanted to talk about and then actually execute it in Palawan. So that was interesting. But it was a good experience. I had like one day to get it all together, and that was also a while, being in charge of teaching stuff. I also taught the basic rescue honor while I was there. I think there's a picture of me teaching. Where you see the kids all sitting here in the school, that's when I was teaching basic rescue. And then you see, this is down by the river. What was the one back here? Yeah, so in this one, they went down to the river and did something kind of cool. Like, they made them get a bunch of rocks and like build like this big altar thing, and then they had to build a fire on it and like see which team could get the fire built fastest. And then they had all the staff members just like start splashing them as if it was raining. I feel like in the Philippines, like the atmosphere, like in Pathfinders, they tend to be pretty tough on the kids sometimes. Sometimes it's good. So yeah, this was me with my team in the top left, where they were building their fire and cooking their food, which for them, that's not an issue at all. Oh yeah.
So are you pretty fluent in class?
I can get away with, I can kind of communicate. Like small talk, I'm probably not going to get. If you're making jokes, I probably won't get that either. Except I might know that you're making a joke, but I'm probably not going to know what it's about. Sometimes, maybe. I can assess a patient pretty well. In Palawan, that was the primary thing that I was working on doing. But like I said, I had to, give worships in Palawan and stuff too. So yeah, I don't mind saying stuff in Palawan, but if you tell me what you want me to say. If afterwards you wanted me to say different phrases in Palawan, I don't mind, provided I remember the words, because I'm actually already starting to forget stuff, I've realized, which is kind of sad, but it's kind of the way it's going to be. Food is cool. These are some of the different things I have made. I was talking earlier about the kumbahong, the cassava. That's what I made there. It was kind of spicy and stuff, and it was really good. Up there is eggs and sayote. That was one of my favorite things to make. I liked that. The sayote is an interesting thing to eat. It kind of takes on the taste of anything else. So like it takes on the taste of your seasonings really well. So if you season it right, it'll taste really good. I tried to make bread in the bottom left there. Got a little burnt, but I was still pretty happy with myself because I was like, hey, I actually made bread. Because to that point, I had actually never made real bread before, like with regular gluten flour and yeast. Because those of you know, folks in my family have celiac, right? So I loved to bake growing up, but it was all these gluten-free stuff. So I was like, I'm going to make real bread and see how this works out. Again, not having an oven makes it difficult. I made pancakes. That's the bread product that I made the most when I was in Marma, and I was proud of my pancakes because I was like, I have no measuring cups or anything, so I was just kind of guessing. I used a recipe, but I just guessed the measurements from what I already knew, so I was proud of myself that it actually turned out well. The last day before I left, I got to try durian because I really wanted to try it. I thought it was good. I've heard lots of people say it was awful. I just thought it was like a little weird, but I still liked it. More food. Mungo beans, that was like my biggest long-term thing because they don't really go bad unless like bugs get in them and eat them. But that was only after I'd had some mungo for like months, and then I found like I think it was like weevils or something. But I mean, it's pretty good because stuff, you can't really preserve anything, and when I'm in Marma, it's a long way to get supplies, and they don't really grow a lot of stuff around there. The people in Kamantian, they have lots of gardens and stuff, and it's not too bad. It's a little different story in Marma, so it's hard for you to get like vegetables and stuff. So when your vegetables that you got from lowland are out, you're just kind of going on the beans and rice and that kind of thing. Yeah, fried rice I made, some vegetables that I made. That was actually taken when I was still in the lowlands at the apartment there. But that's a pretty good representation of what I would make on almost any given day. Most of the time, at least in Kamantian, it was pretty much rice and vegetables every day. So yeah, you can keep food for about 24 hours. I wouldn't advise going over the 24-hour mark. I only got sick once, and it was food poisoning. That was kind of bad. I went to work and I was fine, and then I was like, oh no, I'm not fine, and then I threw up at work and had to go back home for the rest of the day. So yeah, be more careful about making sure your beans haven't gone bad. The helicopter. Helicopter is cool. Helicopter brings you supplies and it flies out patients for you. In Kamantian, in the first part at least, it was bringing supplies, but then prices went way up because I'm sure all y'all know the gas prices got high. It wasn't really much different, and especially for like aviation fuel, very expensive. So then it was like, okay, we're not flying any more supply flights. It's going to be only medical. So yeah. But when they did medical, they were nice enough to like ask people what they wanted and like throw on some supplies. So yeah. So I got to ride in the helicopter, so you can see there's some of those pictures in the helicopter. My house in Marma. Where's this slide here? Okay. My house in Marma. These are some pictures from inside, like right after I had gotten there. So at this point, you can see I have all of my medicines and stuff just kind of spread out there. Because when I went to Marma, my job was going to be that I was going to be the clinic person there and help in the school in Marma. So that was a big step, because you go from Kamantian working in a clinic to being the clinic. So that was like, one of those things where it was a little nerve-wracking. You do a lot of praying and a lot of relying on God, like, I need help with this, for sure. So, yeah. And later on, I got some nice plastic bins so I could actually have all of my stuff contained. But I don't have a picture of that. Okay. Life in and around the village of Marma. So like I said, I got sent to Marma. I did go back to Kamantian a few times, but I was living in Marma. Living in Marma was probably the best part of the trip for me. I really enjoyed the people. I enjoyed working with Jillian, who I mentioned earlier. She's the kind of running the project there, her and her husband there. Her husband kind of speaks English, but he won't, like what English he can speak, he's not going to speak it to you, so only Palauan with him and everyone else except for Jillian. So it's kind of interesting. It forces you to learn even more Palauan because you got to use it. It's not like there's other missionaries to really talk to and stuff. Okay, I want to play a couple soundtracks for you. There's a song, it's them singing This Little Light of Mine. Please ignore where you hear my voice in it. But it gives you an idea of the language, and then there's somebody telling a story, so you can kind of hear the language.
Makan ng silo, ipabanyaku. Mari makan ng silo, ipabanyaku sa tangan alungsod ng maribang. Mandi ko pagkakulan, ipabanyaku. Mandi ko pagkitago, ipabanyaku sa panga at lungsod ng maribang. Mandi ko patapyugan, ipabanyaku. Mandi ko patapyugan, ipabanyaku sa tanga at lungsod ng maribang. Sa kadunyaan, ipabanyaku. Nuginsan sa kadunyaan, ipabanyaku sa tanga at lungsod ng maribang. Mama, ipabanyaku. Dugin sa mama, ipabanyaku sa tanga at...
And I didn't get the rest of it, but it's at lungsod ng maribang. That's the end of it. Yeah.
So the deep voice was yours?
Yes, because I had turned on voice recordings and my phone is sitting right there. Yeah. All right, and there's one other one.
Batong Libon. Samalong ko at si Rosila Umuria. Naran niya si Caroline. Okay. Carolina, badut Carolina, badut English si Caroline ating naran niya. Ating balik si Mimik Marake. Kaya na masak. Baka nga di abot.
Muna.
Atin na. Tapos lang atin. Si Carolina, yan mag-school yo. Abo, mabait ya banat. San niyo mamibit ya gasi at burak dut manunuldo iya. Bago mabait ya dut mga classmate ya. Sino may ato ka classmate? Ako. Atin. Bago sa manugasing maprang niya gasing nang masubo manunundo. Mga gasing. Abo, ating manunulo ito. Ay. Ayat natin yung yogang. Mabait ya banat. Mabait ya dakan. Mabait ya dut mga sasama niya mangingi school. Ah, kanya. Atin, kailangan sulitan siyo sa si Carolina. Sagwa, yan, tabas na school, ating, makasilang ng Carolina, bago mabait ng Carolina. Yan, karatang lutban, no? Nataktak atin lutliwan at langawan. Yan, mau ka ba nating lalungat ba na? Ikaw! Atin, wala pa ako na! Atin, patin doon yung Carolina, hila, ano yung magmamarain? Book ating queer dun itimbag ating notebook. Bukatin no. Miat nating rupa. Dut iskulan agad ani nang ngirit yo. Kwantin. Sabad bang no? Samat makami na dumlok. Sabad buko dun din. Lumudaw. Panut indo yo kadiri to bang mandi ko. Ano? Kadiri basan mo ray. Mandi ko. Aput. Atin ka arat yo. Amo mabait yo.
Okay. Yeah.
So with them they speak fairly quickly, and you're got to the point where you're able to understand as quickly as they're speaking.
Yeah, like I understand everything they're saying in that. So, is anybody familiar with Uncle Arthur? Bedtime stories? Does anybody know the story Two Carolines? That's the story she's telling. So where you hear her like kind of using like the angry voice, she's talking about when Carolyn gets home from school, she's like, "Mother, I'm hungry now." So that's what Jillian was saying, and then she was like talking about how her face would look like it was about to rain, and like when her mother would ask her if she could wash the dishes, she would automatically say, "No, I don't want to," and that sort of thing. So yeah, Jillian is a very good storyteller, better than me, because you know I don't know the language as well. So. I would tell stories and stuff for school. Jillian wasn't the only one that would tell stories, but I told some stories, and I think the kids understood most of it. Yeah. Okay, good folks from Marma. You can see there is yours truly. Jillian is the one in front who's taking the picture. Alina, one of the students. Alina's sister, Mimi, and you see Mabin in the middle. Standing up on the rock there is Leeboy, I think, and then down here with the fire in the top picture there is Rusila. And here is, I can't remember his name, it just left me. Really great guy though, I really like him. Yeah. So when we would go down to the lowlands and come back, most of the time like it would be about supper time or lunchtime, late lunchtime. So you just kind of stop on the trail and build a fire and cook. So generally they would take like pots and rice, and then they would buy like some fish when they were in the lowlands that would be actual fresh fish, because that was kind of nice for them, because everything like that you've taken all the way up there is going to be like salted fish. So that's what they would usually have when we're going back on the trail. More Marma, the scenery. In my bag of gravel that I was proud of. I actually carried gravel on 5 different times, I think. This was the heaviest one. It was, I think I don't know, 40-something kilos or something, I think. I think it was like 43, I think. It was my heaviest one, and I was proud of myself. So to give you an idea of how far we're carrying it, so you see this picture, how you're kind of up on a ridge, right? Kind of. So the place where we got gravel was all the way at the base of that ridge where there's a stream. So if you kind of look off and see how it goes way down, so you go way down on a vertical type trail and then you carry the gravel up, and it's kind of difficult. But these people can carry way more than I can, and they go faster than I can and put me to shame. But I thought, I'm not going to go down there with them and not carry any, so I was going to do my very best. So I could carry like as much as some of the younger people, but like someone my age, they could blow me out of the water really quick and like carry like twice as much as me and stuff. So yeah, they were using this for like building stuff, so they needed it for the cement. So yeah. In case you're wondering, yeah, they carry cement all the way from the lowlands too, and a lot of other really heavy stuff. These people are just like, they're built different. Like from the time that they're 2, they're learning how to hike. You see like a 2-year-old just like walking around and like they know how they need to put their feet so they don't go sliding down the hill. And they'll be walking on like the steep spot and stuff. So yeah, cool. More pictures around Marma. Me with some people. A lot of times it'd be really fun. Everybody would get out on the landing area here and we'd play games and we would cook. So they would cook food for everybody and they would eat. A lot of times that might be like on Sabbath afternoon or something after we would have like a little church service. So yeah. I think there's a better picture of the game where I'll explain the principal game we played. This is the trail to Marma. Most of the trail to Marma is river. So you're going along the riverbed, you cross the river a bunch of times, and after you've done that for several hours, the trail just kind of goes vertical. Because you see how high up Marma is in the other picture, where I'm sitting up on the ridge taking that picture. So you're just going from almost no elevation. I mean, you go up a little elevation on the trail, but it's drastic once you get off the river, and it's just like straight up, and it will wear you out for sure, especially if you're carrying something heavy, to say the least. I was happy with the sunset. I thought it was a nice sunset. I already told you that's Mabin, Lelina, and Rafi. You say C before people's names usually. Down here is Kandawaga. This was another really difficult place to get to. Jillian said she actually hadn't gotten to. I don't think any other missionary has actually been to this spot. Maybe other white people have, but I wouldn't know about it. But here's 2 of the students. It was kind of a cool place. The water was really, really cool, and it kind of had a bluish tint to it, which you didn't really see in the other rivers, so I thought that was cool. And if you look at my rocks later, the black rock came from there. So the black rock comes from the most hardest to get place one of the most difficult to get places that I went to in Palawan. Here is my house in Marma. My house was a temporary house. When Jillian and Junie, her husband, first went to Marma, they built this to stay in. And then after that, they built a more permanent house. But this is what I got, and I think it's probably now being torn down. Or actually, no, they said they moved it, so I think they took it apart and put it back together somewhere else. Here is what I want to talk about. So in the bottom right picture, they're playing the game that we called Shackway. And it's kind of like a take on baseball-ish. So you can see there's a guy here, he's throwing a really lightweight rubber sandal, and the person there kicks it. And you hope nobody catches it. And if they catch it on a bounce, you're also out. So you got to run to where the pitcher was standing and then back, and then you're safe. So that was a fun game. That was the main game we probably played. Everybody loved playing it. It's like a rubber sandal thing that like everybody uses. It's called Duralite. Yeah. And then up there is just a picture of another time when we were all cooking and having a good time together on the landing area there. Also, well, this is perfect actually. So up there, the panorama is inside my house. So you can see it's just kind of tarp walls and stuff, which that would really rattle when it would get really windy. Because where my house is, it's at the top of the landing area there, so it's really exposed. So in the times when there's like a big storm and whatnot, it blows and you hear it and like this house kind of shakes and everything. So it's kind of interesting to say the least. Down here is, I think it's like the only picture I have of Jillian's house. But a lot of times I would go over there for worship and we would eat together and some of the students and her family and whatnot and have a good time, a lot of good times with them. That was there. And the audio you heard was from worships. This is the school in Marma where I taught. There's me teaching some of the kids. Really loved the students there. Good group of kids. Definitely miss them, to say the least. Yeah, good kids. There were a couple times where I had to be the only teacher when Jillian was gone. That was something, because we would have it 2 groups of kids, right? So the younger kids and the older kids. So you have me jumping back and forth between groups, and I can't really speak Palo. And it's like at this point, I can speak it pretty good, but it's not on the level of obviously a native speaker. So the kids, they got a little frustrated sometimes. Actually, it was only because they thought I made their math homework too hard. They were like, you made it too hard. We went the main teacher back. Yeah, I was like, sorry, I was just trying to get you guys to apply yourselves and learn. But Jillian said it was okay. She said they need to push themselves. Sometimes some of the students there needed a little bit of pushing, but then there was other students that were really good. So I think it's kind of a cool contrast here when you see the picture here where it's completely clear and then the one all fogged up. Those are basically the same thing. If you see like the little round thing on the right of this, that's like the wood piece sticking out from my house. So I was leaning out of my house to take the picture because in that level weather I wasn't going to like go outside right at the moment because it was cold and yeah. But that's the contrast that you can see, like how different the weather can change. And that can happen really fast too when you're in Marma. The bottom right is, you probably can't see it very well, but it's my house and there's some folks there that are sitting there. So when they wanted help, they would come and sit. This was one particular day that was pretty busy. I went to visit another patient who was at their house, and I come back and I have plenty of people to greet me that need help too, so yeah. More trail pictures of, well, the Marma Trail, somebody cooking. This one here is when I went to Condawaga, the river there, so it's like above. So you're up there, and then you go straight down to where the river is. And like they don't really do switchbacks and stuff. These trails, they're slick and they're steep, and you need to be careful. I got better as it went on. I got to where you kind of want to put your weight on your toes, at least for me. It worked better, but you still do lots of slipping. I thought this little guy was cool. He just showed up in my house one time. So this was probably the most involved patient we had to deal with. They were like a couple hours away from Marma, and we had to hike there. 4 of us had to sleep in this tiny little hut together. It was, yeah, fun, and it was kind of cold that night. And then they built a little landing area to fly our patient out. He was in pretty bad shape. He hadn't been eating or drinking anything for like 3 or 4 days or something, so he was really dehydrated and whatnot. I ended up giving him a liter of fluid. Don't tell anyone. And then we ended up flying him out. So interesting patient. So these were just pictures from that trip. There was a cave. That was really cool. We went to a cave, which is, I don't know, probably an hour and a half away from Marma with, you know, your regular trails of straight down, straight up. Lots of fun. I went there with some of the students. Pretty cool. You can see here is like the entrance to the cave, so you wouldn't really know it's there, and then that's like inside it. It's actually a pretty big cave. You could fit a lot of people in there. It's cool. This was on the way out of Marma for the last time. It seemed that apparently I wasn't going to get out easily. The river was very high, and it was like just at the margin of being crossable or not crossable. So you can see everybody's kind of struggling. This is after I already got across. It was like all I could do to keep from falling. There was a couple of times I thought, oh man, I'm going to get swept away in this thing. Drinking out of a coconut, the coconut water in there from a young coconut is really nice. And then like the fresh coconut, once you cut it open, is really good too. Oh, yes. So my hair is actually really black at that point because one time when we were hanging out at Jillian's house, some of the students were like, hey, you want to dye your hair and stuff? And because they were doing that, and like they like to dye their hair black. And I don't really get the point of that, but they do. And so they asked me if I wanted to, and I was just kind of like, sure, it might be fun. I've never tried that before, so why not? Afterwards, Jillian reminded me that it was technically against the rules. And Minan, who's Leonda George, when I went back to Kamantian right before I left, she was kind of like, just made some offhand comments about it. And I was like, sorry, I actually wasn't thinking about it. We were just having a good time. I actually said that. And she was like, yeah, that's how it always is. Yeah, so that was good. But the thing is, it was like right before I left, so what are they going to do, send me home? Yeah, I think they probably would have kept me anyway because I had them ask me on several occasions, like, can you stay? And I really kind of wanted to stay, but I wanted to come back here and finish my medic. So yeah, hence I am here now today. Again, another chaotic river picture. Flower that was just really cool. I'd never seen a flower like that. If anybody knows what it's called, I'd love to know. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This is really cool. And if you look at it a certain way, it almost looks like it has like a little mouth, and you like open it and close it and stuff. It's cool. Okay. And then finally heading home. That was my final mountain view as I was leaving Kamantian, because I went to Kamantian and then right after I was done at Marma. So I had to go to leave Marma, go to Puerto, do some paperwork, come back to Kamantian, tell everybody bye there, and then here's a picture in Puerto for the last time. This kind of nice little park where I ate some pizza that was not good pizza, and I wanted it to be good pizza and it wasn't. I was like excited because I hadn't had anything like that in a long time. But nope, no such luck. And then that's getting on the plane to leave Palawan. So yeah, that's kind of a summary of everything there. There are lots more pictures and some other things. If you're interested, you're welcome to email me or text me or anything like that. Yes? So at this certain time, like when it rains, there's these like bugs that come, and they also like the same bugs that like go around lights at night, and the kids really like eating those. They think they're great. Like they just catch them and eat them. They cook them too, and I was offered some. Yeah, I did. I only ate like one or two, and then I was like, here, it's because she gave me a whole handful, the lady there. And I like ate a couple, and I was like, here, I'm getting you, you can have it back. You enjoy them. Because they think they're like wonderful, so yeah.
What did that taste like?
Not like much of anything, just kind of like, no, I don't know. Kind of like if you think of having like, I'm trying to think, what am I imagining? Like think of some sort of a grain or something that's like soft, but it still has a husk on it. So it's kind of like crunchy, wiry stuff. And it doesn't have a whole lot of taste. It's just not much taste to it. So yeah, and then final slide, that's my email. And I want to mention to you guys that I am working on seeing if I can make it so the Kamantian Mountaineers Pathfinder Club can go to the International Camporee. This is still just kind of this is still kind of like at an idea stage, but if you guys are interested in helping with that or interested in donating some money for that, please let me know. I'm going to be moving forward with that hopefully soon. So yeah. And if you just want to randomly send me an email and ask more questions or ask about other pictures or other trips, you're welcome to. It doesn't bother me. So yeah, that's about it. Any other questions?
I have one. Come on, Tony. All right. Well, you guys can hear me. Online, they may not be able to hear me. But what was probably one of the biggest ways that you saw God at work while you were there in Palawan?
Well, with Subliki, for one thing, he probably shouldn't have lived. Yeah, I mean, if it had just been like, if it had moved a little bit, if it had hit an organ in his abdomen, something that would bleed, I mean, he would have bled out way before they ever got to him. So he was definitely blessed. That was for sure something I saw. And then in my own life, I didn't have like these big miracle stories or anything like that, but I definitely saw, I don't know, it's kind of hard to put this sort of thing into words, but kind of you kind of get this realization that like, hey, God really is with me and I really can get through some stressful situations. Because, you know, like I said, in Marma when I was there, it's just kind of like, it's all you. You know, I could call for help if I wasn't sure about something, but there wasn't a guarantee that I would get a timely response or anything like that. So, you know, there's a lot of treatment decisions where, you know, I was just, you know, praying and doing my best and following my protocol book to the best I could. I was very thankful that protocol book and the Village Medical Manual. If you're ever doing medical mission work, you probably want the Village Medical Manual. It's a really good book. It's a great big book, but it has like almost everything that you could think of that somebody in an environment like that would have. So it helps with treatment. It has lots of stuff about the drugs and all of that, so you don't, hurt anything.
Amen. Well, Emory, thank you so much for bringing your stories back to us from Palawan.
Yeah.
We're glad you're back. It seemed like a year was a long time, but a short time. But we praise the Lord for your opportunity to go over there, and we're excited to hear how you're using your experience to be a blessing to others. So thanks for sharing. Amen? Amen. Amen. Well, let's have a word of prayer together, and we'll enter into a new week. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for taking care of Emory while he was over in Palawan, and just all the wonderful stories that he brings back to us about how you were using him to work over there, and you created a team to work together over there to bring healing and hope and help and life to others. And we thank you so much, Heavenly Father, that you're at work all around the world. And we pray that you would show us how we can be missionaries in our own area, in our own towns and cities, and in our own neighborhoods, and how we can bring healing and hope and help and blessings to them too. Father, thank you for the week that you've given to us. We look forward to a new week with you, and we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. I think the young folks are going to spend some time out in the gym, and so you're welcome to stick around and socialize with us if you like. And if not, thank you for spending this time with us, and have a blessed evening.